I think there are one or two questions coming through. I've had a bit of a whistle-stop tour through this, so happy to deal with questions. So what have we got here? So somebody wants a template. Yes, we can let you have that. Yes. Please. I quoted somebody recently. I said you need a budget of at least 50,000 to really, if you're going to do a lot of external, if you're going to do less of it yourself. A lot depends how much of the business plan, the writing of it, the information, how much of the financial information, the business model, how much of that's available. You know, if you've got a lot of that available, then perhaps a bit less. But there's probably 10 to 25,000 to get the forecasts and the business plan, the pitch deck, all in line. The other piece of that is to, if you're looking at, you know, should I do it, is to just have an evaluation. You know, an evaluation could be between 3 and 5K to look at what you have, to look at, you know, are you investable? Because, you know, there are some people who perhaps are coming to the market a bit too early, need to go away and do some more work. And so, you know, the key piece is to delay the start process of that. So I think that's that bit. I think when I recently was reminded when I raised the $1 million in 2007, I think our total fees were 150,000. And that included lawyers of both sides. It included the fees from the venture capitalists, etc. So some of that was only payable on success. But, you know, it reminds me that it is significant. If you're already in business and you're already in that process and you've got, you know, finance director, etc., then a lot of it can be done internally. But effectively, you're going to pay people internally to actually do the work. So in one sense, they are having to do more work than they would normally do. And particularly if you've got fractional CFOs or fractional directors, then you're perhaps paying them more than you would otherwise pay if you weren't doing the fundraising process. So that's a good start anyway.
We have another one.
Yeah.
So can you say something about different regions and differences in the founding process?
When you say regions, are we looking at national regions or UK regions?
Bert.
Who asked that question? Bert, you shook your head. Do you want to unmute yourself? And
I have to unmute him.
Bert, your question.
I can add maybe in Asia and Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, I was particularly Europe versus Middle East was my question.
Versus the Middle East. I think that the UK, well, I think that there are opportunities. I've certainly come across a German platform that is involved in connecting investors and people seeking investment. I'm not 100% sure about the continent, to be honest. I think it's slightly different than the UK. On the other hand, I think there are a lot of government schemes. I came across one in Italy where the government were offering effectively a 3-to-1 investment. So for every 100,000 a qualifying investor put in, the government would put in 300,000. So there are schemes around Europe which are unique to the countries involved, where they're seeking to encourage business. The Middle East and Far East, I can't really say. I would suspect there are a lot more angel investors and people looking for opportunities, particularly in the Middle East. There's quite a bit of, I suspect, opportunities for people with money looking to fund things. I do have some connections out there if you're looking for information on that. The Far East, again, I would have thought Singapore has similarities to the UK. but Malaysia and some of those other countries I'm less aware of. But I think that there are people with significant amounts of money. I was looking at a project where somebody in Manila in the Philippines had come across a particular project and was financing it. So, you know, these do happen. I think to some extent it may be worth, you know, having a follow-up and getting some further information, and maybe I can point you in the right direction.
So the next one is there a difference between raising funds for impact investment? How do you get the evaluation?
Valuation. Ultimately, I think you can ask for a value. You can give a valuation, and people come up with largely a finger in the air exercise. But ultimately, the investor will tell you what they want. Yeah, certainly if it's a VC or a professional investor, if you say we think it's worth 10 million, they will simply say, well, we want 20% or 30% or whatever it might be. If it's an angel, usually the issues around valuation are linked to dilution. And if you're raising 2 million and you don't want to take a significant, a 50% dilution, then you're having to value your business in the sort of 10 million pound range. If your business isn't worth that, then the question may be, is there something you need to do first to get it to a point where it might be worth that? And then you're in a better position from a refinancing perspective. The other options, and I did come across this with a South African business I was talking to a couple of weeks ago, they were looking to do a deal with a South African investor who was going to put in significant amount of money and take something like 55% of the business, but they had then negotiated a ratchet where they were able to buy back equity over time based on the performance of the business, so that ultimately they would get back 50 or 60% of the equity, but only if they did the performance. And I thought they were very wise in the way they were approaching it and very professional. But they did have an investor who was in the friends and family area rather than somebody who was, a professional investor from that perspective, because the professional investor might have decided they didn't want to take the risk, whereas I think they knew this person and therefore, there was a basis of discussion.
Yeah, we have another question. In your experience, is there an area or industry that receives more funding?
I think the IT tech piece receives more funding because it's more scalable, and the opportunity to take a business to 100 million or a billion or whatever is very attractive, and particularly if there are areas that other people have done it. Investors are keen to invest in something like that because they see a really, really good rate of return. And I think all of these things are connected to the ability to scale the business. If you have a platform or you have some software and people are downloading it, you don't need lots of people to work in the business at that point in order to deliver the sales. The sales are effectively a click of a button or something like that, which makes it much easier and more profitable to deliver. Whereas if you're selling widgets or food or something like that, you need a much bigger group of staff to operate the business.
Okay, one of our attendees is asking, we provided our service in the EU, the Americas and Australia with the 3 revenue stream, but very careful about legal funding.
Yeah, it's I think, where are you, sorry, if Dr. Chivingo, where are you based? Where are you based? in your business?
UK,
You're based in the UK and you're providing services to the EU, the Americas, and Australia,
Australasia, including
Australasia. And when you say legal funding, do you mean
illegal
legal
funding.
structure? Sorry?
illegal funding. Because of the DPR, we registered in the UK. I'm extremely careful. There is a lot of people offering funding. However, I don't have the due diligence, the team to do the due diligence to finding out if the funding they offer is coming from a legal firm or where
Yes.
they're coming from.
Oh, I see what you mean. That somebody's offering you funding, you don't know whether they're kosher or not,
Precisely.
effectively.
In the UK, can be very, very costly.
Yes, I think you're right. I think normally, certainly in my experience, the people I've dealt with, I would say are reputable people, and therefore I haven't had that sort of problem to some extent of wondering whether they were fly by night or anything. I think the issues of it may be worth us talking offline, if that's okay, and you can give me a bit more detail and I can give you a steer. But certainly, the organisations I've dealt with around the funding piece, I haven't had that problem. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but the biggest issue is, I think, how much money they want you to pay them to evaluate stuff, and that's an issue. Again, if people are asking you for too much money up front and you have no idea who they are, then obviously tread carefully.
Yes,
I don't know. Perhaps that's why I sort of offer this, are you investable and who are you dealing with service? And if that's something you want, let's have a chat.
Yes, of course, I would welcome that.
Not at all. What else, Miri?
We haven't more. We have requests to send them
Lots of demands for the
templates.
template. Well, I look
Yeah.
forward to. We'll send that out to everyone.
Yeah, of course.
I think, yeah. And if anyone thinks of a question that they didn't ask and suddenly want to ask a further question, just drop us a line, please. And we'll probably be in touch with you anyway. But happy to help if there's anything that comes to mind. And I think in the UK, if it's relatively small funds and that you're after, say, under $500,000, and you've got some it's match funding that you're looking for. So you've got 100, 200, and you want some match funding. There are, I'm going to call them quasi-government sources that are actually quite useful. And if you've got a good project, then I would say that's a good place to go for sort of post-revenue, but still relatively early stage funds. If you're wanting more than a couple of million, I think that's much more. You want professional end. And I think the other piece I would add is don't ask for too little, because the worst situation you can be in is going back for more funds in 12 to 18 months time. And it's better to take 5 million now and accept a 30% dilution than actually have the funds to be able to overcome all the issues that come your way, rather than start with 20 and suddenly discover you had another 30% or 20 to 30% in a year's time. As there are always things in any of these processes where you didn't think about it, you didn't see it, and particularly if you've got an issue around sales, that's largely where things start to fall down. It's rare that it's somebody that didn't post the invoices in the right place, but sales processes, the marketing bit, where are the customers, and don't underestimate the timescale. If it's, I think the new sales director said to me, it's going to take 2 years, and he was right. But the rest of the directors didn't want to hear that, because we wanted them within 3 to 6 months. We didn't get them in 3 to 6 months. So if somebody's saying to you, that the sales process is 2 years, then, you know, finance the business on that basis. So I think those are the important bits and pieces. Somebody wanted my email. Can I
Yeah,
have
I
my
already,
email?
yeah, I already.
You've
sent
done
it.
that, have you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Mm.
Any further questions? I think if
Anthony,
not,
I have a question.
Yes, David.
I'm already at the stage with my kind of fledgling idea of being a bit of a bottleneck in the process, in the sense that I can kind of do it all, but I can't get it all done. And I guess that
Yes.
gets me thinking about the need for resources, you know, human resources.
Yes.
Would you advise trying to make permanent hires, or trying to kind of talk about the kind of close collaborators that you have with the business? Because I suppose one might seem more credible than the other.
I think it depends what you're short of. I have sales and marketing resource on a, you know, fractional part-time basis that I pay for as I need it. Yes, it means I have to do more of it, but it's certainly cheaper. And the same thing for financial resources. I think both of those two, you know, are available on a, you know, as used basis. I think the bigger problems are around if you've got people in operations, areas where actually you need them around all the time. So I would suggest the other piece is, do you need a business partner? You know, that's the other piece. You know, do you need somebody else who's sees things the same way as you do, but has slightly different skills than you have? The other piece is, are you charging enough? You know, is the profit there, and can you earn more by, you know, servicing a few less people? That's another way of looking at it. But again, happy to talk offline if you think it's valuable.
Very helpful, thank you.
It's one of the reasons why I say, you know, if there's a planning piece, if it's a short-term project, then buy it in. If it's something that actually you're going to need long-term, you might want to have somebody on a, you know, on a trial basis of some description, on the basis that, you know, if you help me get the business up and running, there's a permanent job. It's and I think, yeah, those and the other piece.
That's very helpful.
The other bit somebody was saying to me some months ago is, particularly in the third world, you can get fractional people very cheaply. Now I haven't done that, but this chap was he was in West Coast America, so he was linking up with people in the Philippines who were, you know, spoke good English and were able to provide him with the services he needed. And because of the arbitrage of cost of living, they got very well paid, and he got something that was very good value. So
yeah. I suppose to share my experience of kind of really just stepping off into a lot of this type of thing, I'm considering things like apprenticeships, internships, you know, even kind of local council grants and things like that to get the kind of, you know, the footings of some resources in before I even start thinking about things like sales directors and finance directors and commercial directors.
But you may want to look at the manager role or the two roles down. The thing I would suggest, have a look at, if you read the E-Myth at all, you come across the book, The E-Myth. No. It's worth a read, largely because the first half is how not to do it. And the second half is a suggestion of how a better way to do it. And if you are taking people in on the basis you're being really clear what they're doing and what you want them to do, the danger is we take them on and we sort of expect them to learn by osmosis. Whereas the more we've actually written down what it is they have to do, because we understand what they have to do, the easier it is to create that benchmark or accountability piece. I think it's page 185 in the E-Myth. It's somewhere around there. There's a really good chapter on how to structure a business, but also how to write the job descriptions around, or the accountability descriptions around the people you take on.
And that's E-Myth. Is that how you say it?
E-Myth.
If you can write on Messenger, because Some are
Want me to write
asking-
it here?
Yeah, thank you.
It's by Michael Gerber, and it's been around a long time, so it's not a new book. I think the one I think it was originally written in the 70s, and I think the E-Myth Revisited is an 80s early 80s book. But it's if you're in an early stage business, it's worth a read, and it's not difficult to read. It's not a, you know, the other one I recommend to people is Simon Sinek's book Start With Why, and that's a fun, it's a bit more of a business read. It connects, I think, into the sort of vision bit, but he's got, particularly if you're involved in sort of tech type startups, again, there's a particular graph there around early adopters of new technology. And when we were, you know, and the key question then is, are you targeting the people who are early adopters in your product area, rather than people who are late adopters? And that can actually be quite a valuable sort of idea around, you know, who you're targeting for sales. But again, if you want to talk further, happy to do that. We'll probably send out a link to my Calendly link, and if you want to book a call, happy to follow up anything that you know, you would like to.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Not at all. Anyone else?
Yeah, just on the continuation of that the Bert mentioned, I have a product. Literally, I paid for the entire development of the software. It's service from universities to corporation and the student themselves in 10 languages. Now, the thing is, it's all completed. My situation is launching it. So that's where the capital funding come in. So that's where I'm stuck in a way. Yeah.
And I think I said earlier, having, you know, talking to people who you think might use it, you know, who's your pilot project? Who are your launch customers? You know,
Right.
Boeing do not launch a new aircraft without talking to the airlines about what they want, and they need to have an airline or two airlines who agree to be the launch customers for their new aircraft, and they get a better price on it, and they work with them on the snagging, etc., etc. So I always say in this scenario, who's your launch customer? Who have you talked to? Because I wouldn't advise you to rush off and launch until you've actually talked to some real people who are going to use it and made absolutely sure that what you are offering, they actually want to buy.
Yeah, what I've done before I actually ventured into that project, because I used to lecture at a couple of universities. And what I've done is the quantitative analysis, the qualitative analysis, regression analysis, and feasibility study with 52 universities and 10,000 students and about 2,000 corporations. And yet the things are pre-contract from the universities and pre-contract with the corporations and pre-contract with the students. So the question is this actually launching something where I can get the money? They already—
Well, look, let's have a further conversation on it. I think I need to talk to you in more detail. If you've got people who want the product, then it's then a question of, you know, what is the cost of delivering the product to the people who actually want it and have said they want it, compared to where you're at. And if you've got real customers, then it's easier to finance. But it depends, you know, how long is the sales process or the delivery process going to take? And but it's probably worth us having a further discussion.
Welcome to, please.
Okay. The name I think I've done that. The other one was,
Yeah.
hang on, start with why. Right, Simon. I think it's Simon Sinek, yeah. Sorry, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Anyway, have a look at those two. They're good start points, I think. And as I say, the Simon Sinek book is there's more around sales in that point, and you know, and the marketing and who wants it, etc. Anything else?
No, there isn't.
Yes, I will send out everyone I'll send a Calendly link to everyone later on today.
Another question that one of the attendees means, I think Mr. Goldman, is that if you know the difference between Asia and UK regarding the impact on investment and how to get the evaluation, I think.
I'm not as good on Asia as I am in the UK. But again, I think it would be worth a more detailed conversation. I've got some contacts in Australia who have contacts in the sort of Far East. So it would be worth having a follow-up conversation on that.
But
Anything else from anyone?
yeah, no, nothing. I hope the attendees get what they needed from this webinar or what they were expecting.
Good.
Yeah.
And okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Really nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
And I look forward to speaking to some of you later, and anyone who wants to get in touch.